Şimdi iya, dedi, hemen oldu.
Once upon a time, in a forest as green as emerald, there lived a clever little cat named Whiskers. Now, Whiskers was not your ordinary cat. He was as curious as a fox and as brave as a lion. One sunny afternoon, Whiskers came across something that sparked his curiosity. It was a skull, as white as snow and as shiny as the moon. Oh, what could this be? Wondered Whiskers, his green eyes sparkling with excitement. As he prowled closer, he noticed the skull was as empty as a hollow tree. It had big, empty eye sockets and a wide, toothless grin. Whiskers, being the curious cat, decided to investigate further. Hello there, he meowed, poking the skull with his soft paw. The skull remained silent, its wide grin seemingly mocking Whiskers. You're a quiet one, aren't you? Whiskers said, his tail swishing in irritation. But the skull only stared, silent and unblinking. Then, Whiskers had an idea. Maybe, just maybe, he could make the skull talk. He decided to put on a little act. He arched his back, puffed up his fur, and hissed at the skull. But the skull didn't budge. It only sat there, grinning its wide, toothless grin. Undeterred, Whiskers tried again. This time, he meowed as sweetly as he could, purring and rubbing against the skull. But again, the skull remained silent, its empty eye sockets staring right back at Whiskers. Feeling a bit frustrated, Whiskers decided to give it one last try. He stood tall, cleared his throat, and meowed as loudly as he could. But the skull, as before, didn't respond. It only sat there, its wide grin seemingly wider than before. Whiskers sighed, his little heart filled with disappointment. But then he had a thought. Maybe the skull couldn't talk. Maybe it wasn't supposed to. And maybe, just maybe, that was okay. From that day forward, Whiskers didn't try to make the skull talk. Instead, he would visit it every day, telling it stories of his adventures, sharing his thoughts, and even his dreams. And even though the skull never said a word, Whiskers felt a strange sense of comfort. It was as if the skull was listening, its wide, toothless grin a sign of its silent companionship. And so, the story of Whiskers and the skull became a legend in the forest. It taught everyone that sometimes silence can be just as comforting as words, and that companionship comes in many different forms.